A new year, a new agenda. From taxes to preschool education. What's the priority among state lawmakers, and can taxpayers afford it? We sit down with the Speaker of the Indiana House, Brian Bosma. Plus, a new push to get people signed up for health insurance.
There are trained individuals on the ground throughout Indiana.
We talk with the face of the Affordable Care Act, Kathleen Sebelius, and her message for Governor Pence. And our political insiders weigh in on what's making news in the coming days. That and much more on this edition of Indianapolis This Week.
RTV6, the Indy Channel. This is Indianapolis This Week with Rafael Sanchez.
Good morning and Happy New Year. A jam-packed short session. Tomorrow, lawmakers begin their second week of work after the snowstorm, which delayed them for several days. One of the biggest issues on the agenda, the same-sex marriage amendment. Republican lawmakers filed the amendment on Thursday, and it has a new name, H.J.R. 3. And they filed a companion law, one of they hope will ease concerns about unintended consequences of the amendment, including on civil unions and domestic partner benefits offered by companies. It's an amendment seeing a lot of backlash from companies and universities across our state. Democrats are immediately speaking out against it.
When our founders put freedom of speech in the Constitution, they didn't need a bunch of follow-on laws to say what it meant. When they put freedom of religion in there, they didn't need to do the same things.
Joining us now is Speaker of the House, Brian Bosma. He has been with the House of Representatives since 1986. Mr. Speaker, will this bill get a hearing, and will the voters of Indiana get to vote on it?
Well, it will receive a hearing. In fact, it's going to be heard tomorrow, Monday, at 10 a.m. in the House chambers, along with the companion bill that's an expression of legislative intent, setting aside some of the questions that have been raised about the impact of it. I presume it will come out of committee, but that's not a foregone conclusion, and hopefully, ultimately, Hoosiers will decide and have the right to decide what marriage is in the state.
You've also put out your agenda for the upcoming session, a short session. You have a lot of work to get done. One of the big issues is pre-K, preschool for kids. And about 60% of students currently in the ages of 3 to 4 don't go to pre-K. It is not fully funded currently by the state. Do you hope for it to be fully funded?
Yeah. In fact, it's not funded at all. Indiana is one of 10 states that put no money into pre-kindergarten. Until this last year, House Republicans had a very aggressive program. It's the one we're bringing back this year. It was scaled way back. There's about $4 million set aside for certain enhancements for private kindergarten programs, pre-kindergarten programs. It's our hope that we will fund a strong pilot program for a couple of thousand children, low income, for high quality programs, so we can do some pilot testing, see if this program works. It took us 20 years to make this happen for kindergarten. Now 96% of students have a full day program.
Will this be a voucher or sort of like a block grants kind of program in the initial phase?
Well, it's kind of a combination. Last year we ended up with a proposal very similar this year that grants a voucher. The voucher has to be matched by private funds, state funding and private funding, together for that child to a high-quality program. And there's already a rating system that the FSSA puts into place, and we're looking for Paths to Quality 3 and 4 programs, high curriculum, getting a child ready to show up at kindergarten, ready to learn.
As you know, we are the crossroads of America, right? That's our nickname. Over $500 billion worth of products shipped across Indiana. I'm not sure they got shipped across last week with all the snow and ice, but nonetheless, it does get shipped. You've set aside $400 million for the infrastructure of roads. What more can we expect on that issue?
Well, we have actually appropriated $430 million for state and local roads last year. We set aside another $430 million. We set aside
is a bigger number.
It is quite a bigger number. And we set aside another $400 million without expending it, but set it aside in addition to our $2 billion in reserves for future infrastructure projects. Our team would like to target additional lanes on our major 65, 70, the interstates around the state. If you've traveled north to Chicago, you know, after it goes from 3 to 2 lanes, it's a real bottleneck on commerce. We think it should go there, but we're going to leave it to the Department of Transportation to determine where.
Another bigger issue for you is the workforce. We know know that unemployment has not fallen to the level you want to see it. When we look at the Indiana workforce numbers, a lot of Hoosiers just do not have the college degrees that are necessary. In fact, you put out a study that by 2018, 55% will need a college diploma, and currently only 33% have an associate's degree or higher. How do we improve that skills gap?
Well, we're taking a lot of measures. We've created a special council chaired by the governor last year with private sector people on it, all kinds of elements of state government to put together a strategic plan. But we do know one thing that's working right now, and that is the internship programs coupled with some of the high-tech manufacturing like Toyota University, where they're paying students that attend Vincennes University 3 days a week. They're on the factory floor 2 days a week, earning $17 an hour. We're looking for incentives to bring that program to other employers throughout the state to grab up, and it just doesn't have to be college students. It could be people getting retrained for a new job where they earn an associate's degree and work on a manufacturing floor at the same time.
You think lawmakers will take up the issue of minimum wage? I know across the country it's a big issue. The president, when he gives his State of the Union address, may bring that up. Will Indiana take a look at possibly raising that minimum wage, or will you leave that up to someone else?
Probably not. I'll tell you why. We have studies that are totally proven that the vast majority of those minimum wage earners are college students and folks who would otherwise not have that job. And studies show that if the minimum wage is raised, employers just will eliminate those jobs. So we're really taking money out of the economy, to putting people onto the unemployment rolls by raising it.
One more big issue, of course, is the issue of taxes. And the big issue, of course, is the personal property tax. And a lot of the city and counties are saying, look, if you do away with that, we may lose $1 billion. What are we going to do? Please don't do this to us. What are you going to do on that issue?
Well, some have said they want to eliminate the tax immediately. That's not a wise situation. $1.07 billion statewide, and that goes straight to local schools, cities, counties, and towns. It really can't be done with the tax caps that we've already placed on those units of government. So our program that the House Republicans have announced is a county option that allows counties to opt in to a permanent exemption for new equipment. So if someone moves from Illinois or they expand their existing employment, they can grant them that permanent tax abatement, essentially, in the form of an exemption. It gets the economy growing and doesn't have quite the impact on local units.
In the last 40 seconds, how do we pay for all this? I know that everyone wants, taxes cut, and they want this program, and don't touch my program, but how do you pay for all this stuff without increasing taxes or causing some other problem for the state?
Well, Indiana is the envy of the nation because of very frugal state government over especially the last 3 years. We have the second highest excess surplus in the nation, the reserve of $2 billion that we have in the bank. We have the lowest cost of government that we've had since 1973. So we've done great, taking great strides in this. We have the money existing today to fund the programs we're talking about without raising anyone's taxes. In fact, perhaps still cutting some.
Crystal ball, will you end on time this year?
You bet.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Will you come back again?
Oh, absolutely. Love to.
I'm going to hold you on those two things, ending on time and coming back.
They'll both happen.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. After the break, we'll be joined by our political insiders for their take on the beginning of the 2014 session. Plus this. Can I put you on the spot?
Let's roll.
Do you think you'll run for mayor? You'll want to hear what he has to say after I ask that question. That was Congressman Andre Carson. Part of our interview is coming up. Last week, we were not able to air Indianapolis This Week because of the weather. Congressman Andre Carson stopped by to discuss the passing of former Congressman Andy Jacobs Jr. and his mentor's legacy. The legacy of former Congressman Andy Jacobs Jr. What is that legacy, Congressman?
It's a legacy of integrity. It's a legacy, surprisingly, though he was a proud progressive, it's a legacy of fiscal conservatism. But it's also a legacy of true servant leadership. I mean, Andy, he refused the trappings of public office. He just wanted to stay connected to the people. He was certainly a mentor of mine. I remember when my grandmother couldn't find someone to watch me, if my Aunt Judy was unavailable, she'd take me over Andy Jacobs' home, and I'd wake up the following morning and he'd say, okay, now I want you to read the newspaper and tell me about the Iran-Contra affair. I'm like, gosh, can I play with my G.I. Joes, Andy? Give me a break. But he was that kind of guy. He was that kind of guy. He loved information. He was an avid reader. But more importantly than that, he himself, as you can read in his accounts, he refused first-class tickets. He refused to have his name on his office. He just really wanted to stay connected to the people. He really believed that Congress, the seat of Congress, office belongs to the people, as do I.
We also put the congressman on the spot. For this program, I always tell our guests the topics of conversation, but never ever provide the questions. While talking to Mr. Carson, I went off script and I asked if we could talk about his political future. Here's what he had to say. Can I put you on the spot?
Let's roll.
Do you think you'll run for mayor?
You know, and you know
what? And this is so out of what? Because usually I tell you what I'm going to ask you.
Right? I mean, well, you always keep it real. That's why we love you.
But I'm going to tell the audience that usually I kind of tell you the topics.
Yeah.
So this is really coming out of left field.
No.
Will you stay in your seat or will you run for mayor?
I'm staying in my congressional lane. There's a lot of work to do. I'm currently the ranking member for economic development on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. We're going to have a small business forum with the GSA, trying to get some of our small Hoosier businesses a part of the federal process. I'm enjoying what I'm doing in my space right now. I'm in my lane, I know my lane, and I'm keeping my head down doing the work for the people.
Are you open to be challenged? There's some talk that the mayor, Greg Ballard, may seek a different position. It could be the 7th District. Are you ready for a challenge?
This is a free and open society. This is a democracy. This is what America's all about. I think Mayor Ballard's doing a good job as mayor. Some of my friends are interested. They're all qualified. If he wants to run for Congress, I welcome him, but it will be warfare. It will be warfare. But I respect Mayor Ballard. We have a good working relationship. But I mean, hey, this is what public office is all about. If folks want to express an interest and run for office, let the people decide. But the work speaks for itself. Been able to bring in over $500 million since I've been in office. We've helped to create a lot of jobs. So we're doing the people's work. And some of the ribbon cuttings that the good mayor has attended has been a result of some of the votes that I've taken in support of our city. So at the end of the day, I can proudly say we've been able to bring in a lot of that money that the mayor takes credit for. So
2014 is going to be interesting.
Let's rock and roll.
2014 will be very interesting, and all congressional seats are up, and everyone has to be ready to fight whomever shows up on that ticket, right?
Correct. And I don't anticipate Mayor Ballard would be dumb enough to take on Andre Carson to get his hat handed to him if he did.
I think the mayor enjoys being mayor, and the partisan atmosphere in Washington is not conducive to actually getting real work done. The mayor would prefer to be out here with real people.
We heard just moments ago from the Speaker of the House, Brian Bosma. He talked about pre-K education, he talked about taxes, he talked about a whole lot of stuff. Can this legislature get all of that done in the short session?
Well, I think actually starting tomorrow, the legislature is going to be dominated by the same-sex marriage debate. I don't think that what they tried to do this week, which was introduce a companion bill that explains what the second sentence of the constitutional amendment means in legislative terms, is really legally worth anything. But they're trying to do it to protect their political behinds with respect to this. So it's going to be interesting. I don't think that it's a complete given that thing's going to get out of the Judiciary Committee tomorrow. If I were betting, I'd bet it will, but it's not a complete given. So that's what's going to dominate the next couple of weeks, and it's going to be interesting to see whether other things can come to the surface.
Well, I appreciate my good friend Brian Bosma's comments about a companion bill for legislative intent, but it's just that it's a companion bill, which means it can be changed by a future legislature, it can be changed, anything can be repealed, anything can happen to it. Once something is put in the state constitution, it is put in the state constitution. And there's a number of case law out there in Indiana law books that says that where people tried to do this before, where they tried to say, well, the statute explains the Constitution, the courts have tossed it aside. So I'm not really sure that's going to help. With respect to some of the other things, I think everybody's in the same boat. They just disagree on method. The Senate, they offered a proposal this past week on eliminating business personal property taxes for small business. They seem cool to the idea of vouchers in a non-budget year for early child education, but they're all headed the same way. It's just a matter of picking the right route.
But can we afford some of these things? I think it sounds great when you say, I'm going to cut taxes, right? That's a great statement to make, but can the cities and counties afford it with the current property tax caps? And the answer for many of them is, no, we can't. No,
the cities can't afford it. The unfortunate thing for the cities is it's the legislature doing it to the cities, so it doesn't really have any impact on the state budget. And the people who aren't voting on these things don't have a say in it because it's going to be hitting the cities and towns across the state if they in fact do it. But I think both the House and the Senate have poured a lot of cold water on that proposal, so I don't anticipate it's going to be to the degree that the governor has asked for in any way. And with respect to the other issue with early childhood education, I think pre-K is incredibly important. We've said it consistently on this show, and every study shows it helps programs. I don't like the way they're thinking about funding it. I don't, and I think it's.
What don't you like about it?
It's vouchers.
It's vouchers. The V word.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that we ought to be going that way in funding it. It's setting up two different sources of money for public education, and
Abdullah, are you okay with it?
Yeah. I've always been fine with vouchers. I mean, to me, it's about education. That is the point. It's about educating kids.
But under your system of thought of vouchers, does everyone get a voucher? Does every child that's 3 or 4?
In my perfect universe, everybody would get a voucher. Unfortunately, that is not economically feasible right now, so let's get it to the kids who need it the most, which are usually kids who come from low-income homes, about 185% of poverty. I want to jump back to the business personal property tax real quick.
You got the last word on that? Go ahead.
Spoke to Governor Pence this past Friday. He said he can be happy with either the House plan that gives counties the ability to opt out of the business personal property tax, or the Senate plan that just does it for small businesses that would only cost local governments $25 to $30 million annually, a far cry from the $1 billion.
Well, stick around because these guys are going to come back. We want to tell you as well that to view the full interview with Congressman Andre Carson, head online to theindychannel.com and click on Indianapolis This Week tab at the top of the page. Next, the Affordable Health Care Act. Kathleen Sebelius tells us why Hoosiers need it. Our interview with her is next. The Affordable Care Act remains a controversial law. There is talk of House Republicans attempting to call for another vote to repeal it. At the same time, the face of the law, Secretary of Health and Human Services, Kathleen Sebelius, is hoping that more people will sign up. We spoke to her about the next big deadline. That's, of course, March the 31st.
We know in Indianapolis that and across the state of Indiana, that there are over 900,000 uninsured and eligible residents. And most of those folks, 95% of them, are eligible either for tax credits in the marketplace, or if Governor Pence decides to move ahead with Medicaid expansion. So this is health security for millions of residents of Indiana who currently don't know if they can pay their bills, don't know if they'll be bankrupted if someone in their family gets sick. So check out the website. It's available, and it's a brand new day for health coverage in America. There are trained individuals on the ground throughout Indiana who can actually help people answer questions. You can go on the website and find local help. They're available at hospitals, at community health centers. 3 more months to go, and we're going to be working hard to make sure that as many Americans as possible know about the law and can take advantage of new benefits that they have under the law.
On Friday, the state's Family and Social Services Administration says it added 3,400 people to the Healthy Indiana plan. There are still 17,000 people eligible families whose income is at or below the federal poverty level. Our insiders are back. Is it a brand new day for the Affordable Health Care Act?
So this is a new day. It kind of looks a lot like the old day. I mean, at the end of the day, this has still forced people to go from full-time to part-time. We still have more uninsured Americans. It's only going to cost the state of Indiana more money down the road. You know, just because a bad idea on a new day is still a bad idea.
Indiana usually looks down its nose at the state of Kentucky for a lot of good reasons. Number one, their basketball programs, of course, but number two, the fact that we've always been ahead of them in just about everything. Now we're, because of the decisions this governor's making compared to what the decisions that the Kentucky governor's making, Kentucky folks are going to have great health care. They've signed up more people than just about anybody per capita in the United States. They're moving forward. It's going to transform that state. Meanwhile, Indiana is going the wrong way.
So what do we need to do? Because at the end of the day, here's a program, whether we like it, don't like it, it's the law. What does this state have to do to at least keep up with the rest of the states?
They need to expand Medicaid for number one, and they should. I mean, it's too late for a state exchange now, but hopefully at some point they're going to realize that they need to get people signed up.
Is that the answer?
No. If you're going to expand Medicaid, you can't do it under the old system. Expand it using the Healthy Indiana plan model, where people have some skin in the game, and actually the customers are satisfied. We keep costs under control and deliver health care to individuals. That's the way to do it.
The big question that I still have for the government is whether or not they're going to pursue these penalties if people do not sign up by March the 31st. We still have millions of Americans, thousands of Hoosiers who have yet to go on the website or go to a navigator or make that phone call.
Yeah,
at all about that?
It remains to be seen what the feds are going to do about that. You know, they're not blameless in this with respect to some people not signing up because they didn't have things ready when they should have been ready. So there ought to be some sort of leniency with respect to that. But the whole system, for it to work, you got to have the individual mandate, and there's got to have some teeth to it. Otherwise, people won't sign up. And again, I remind you, the individual mandate is to force people who, in the previous system, were getting health care for free because they'd go into emergency rooms for their health health care and then declare bankruptcy, and the rest of us would pay for it.
Last word on this one.
The bigger issue is not so much, I would argue, the individual mandate where those folks had to be taxes. It is school districts and local governments that the IRS will penalize, which totally violates the U.S. Constitution and complete separation and principles of federalism. That's going to be the bigger issue.
The debate will continue. They're the best of the business. Democrat Kip 2 and Abdul Hakim Shabazz with IndyPolitics.org. The conversation as well continues on Twitter. Check out their handles and give us your opinion and stay up with Kip, Abdul, Laura, and Jennifer throughout the week. Indianapolis This Week continues after the break. This week, the late former Congressman Andy Jacobs Jr. of Indiana was honored on the floor of Congress. The Indiana delegation gathered for a special message given by Representative Luke Messer.
Andy exemplified all that was right about being a public servant. He could disagree without being disagreeable. He believed you could lift people up without tearing people down. And despite his many years representing his constituents in Congress, he refused to become jaded.
Mr. Jacobs, a public servant who served his state well. I'm Rafael Sanchez, and that's this edition of Indianapolis This Week. I thank you for joining us. This Week with George Stephanopoulos is up next. Have a great Sunday.